Okay, a very good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to this webinar about gender representation in teaching materials. This webinar is scheduled to last 1 hour and 30 minutes, and it is being recorded. So just a brief background to this project. We started back in November. Seems like a distant memory now. And the teachers involved in this project began with an online course focused on gender equality, gender issues in education, and in particular language education. During the time they took this 3-week online course, we had a fantastic WhatsApp group where we shared discussions, thoughts, responses. We had extra resources put in there, and it's a really nice community of people just expanding their knowledge and understanding and sharing their experiences in this area. We then had a 2-day hybrid workshop in December, and I say hybrid because the teachers were in a room together in the country with other teachers from that country, but we still all worked together online. So it was a really nice experience. And during that workshop, the focus was really putting some of that theory from the online course into practical application. So we spent, particularly on the second day, a lot of time creating and adapting existing lessons that we might use, or discussing some of the curriculums and resources that are used into creating them to become more gender sensitive and eventually more gender responsive. And then from this, we have been working again at a distance through our wonderful WhatsApp groups, collaborating to create some teaching tips and some general teacher guidance materials connected to what we've learned during this experience, which will eventually be available on the Teach English Africa website. And now one of our final steps of this project is this webinar, where some of the teachers that have been on this project are going to share with you today what they have been doing in their context in terms of connecting it to what they have learned on this course. So I'm not going to read the agenda to you in detail, but this is the overview of the agenda here. We have 6 presenters who have been working incredibly hard, as well as still working as teachers, to prepare their presentations for you. Each presentation is scheduled to allow for 10 minutes, but as we know, sometimes when we're passionate about something, we may overrun slightly. We intend to have some Q&A, some questions that we would like to take at the end. That said, we already started a few minutes late, so if we don't have time at the end, please continue to post your questions in the chat throughout the webinar. We won't respond to them straight away. We will try and respond at the end, but we also have some incredible webinar note takers in our team. So they will also include the questions and ensure any notes they write up, which will be available on the website, will include answers to these questions. So even if you don't get your question answered straight away, we will make sure it will be available eventually. So post them in the chat and we will try and get to them at the end. But if we don't, we will make sure we are able to respond to them in some other materials and other way. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our first presenter, who I can see is ready. So you may unmute yourself and begin. Thank you. I think you're still muted, Osman.
Hi, everyone.
Great, we can hear you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you perfect, Usman.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Thank you, Donna, for giving me the floor. Okay, I greet each and everyone who is present here in this platform. Well, I also greet the British Council and English Connect for giving us this opportunity to share our presentation, okay, which is entitled Advocating for Gender Equity okay, in teaching and learning materials, okay? As you know, gender responsive communication skill is a must-have skill, okay, for all of us, we practitioners. I think that we have to be aware of it while teaching or when dealing with our students. Okay. Now, if you don't mind, we can move. Steve, can you hear me? Okay. How much do we know about gender responsive language? This is a warm-up that will be the lead-in to the presentation proper. Okay, but we won't waste too much time on it because you're familiar with this type of exercise. It's a matching exercise to test your gender responsive language use. Okay, match the item labeled common mistakes in column A with the corresponding item labeled good practice in column B. So as you can see, and you have gender responsive language A, B, C, D, common mistake, good practice. By matching them, you will find the right word in terms of gender speaking, gender language, the right word. This is just meant for a warm-up and at the same time, a takeaway for those who are participating. Next slide, please. Okay, this is an overview of the presentation that will underpin the presentation. And I would like us to reflect on it, that teaching materials like textbook are full of knowledge and wisdom for learners, but they can also perpetuate gender stereotypes, okay? In some textbook we are currently using, women are often depicted as secondary characters to their male counterpart, who are instead given diverse and greater roles. What we have to know is that content and information from textbook are naturally reliable and trustworthy for most learners. So when blatant gender stereotypes are portrayed in these materials, this can negatively impact students' present and future life. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the overview. And why does the school setting matters? Just because teaching materials intended for learners should be inclusive by design and equity-oriented by content, because the school setting remains an ideal place for the confidence and identity building of the learners, for their open-mindedness and growth mindset. But also, it is an ideal place for shaping role model citizens of tomorrow. Next slide, please. Now, we can talk about gender without really touching on these stereotypes. Okay, these are key concepts and their definition, like stereotypes, which is a fixed idea or image that many people have of a particular type of person or thing, but which is often not true in reality and may cause harm or hurt or offense. We have gender. Gender is the representative or the characteristic of women or men or boys or girls, but which are socially constructed, which are social construct. And they're given life through how they're represented in our textbook. And we know that gender bias in teaching and learning material like textbook is a major challenge, and we think that it needs addressing. If we take our context, okay, the contextual analysis of textbook in use in our country, they reveal that women, not all of them, of course, but some of them, they reveal that women are relegated to the background in terms of social status. They mostly play insignificant role with an almost exclusive focus on household chores. Seldom are they portrayed serving the society outside their home. We'll see that later with the example of books that we have selected and through the image or the pictures that are inside, okay? And which are unfortunately in current use in our system. The teaching and learning materials, they are the educational materials that teachers use in the classroom to support specific learning objectives as laid out in lesson plans. They should not only assist the student in the learning process, but also help expand their knowledge about the dynamic evolution in all sectors of society and the world. I feel like this is interesting. It is a textbook are meant to be a window in the world, in all the domain. Next slide, please. Okay, now, against all that we have said, okay, after all that we have said, this is an analysis of the pictures that I was talking about that I have found in Go for English that I think we need to think on them, over them, think about them to see what is gender bias in it, and see maybe how it could be, okay, corrected, okay? So we're going to analyze this picture, okay, through three main criteria. Let's say in terms of visibility, in terms of occupational role, but also in terms of domestic roles. Next slide, please. Okay, if we take this picture, for example, you have women at home, and underneath you have a text. I have coined a certain number of, a set of questions, okay, just to lead in, to help, okay, participant maybe, if we have time, to question this, to find answer to this question, okay? But since we don't have enough time, we'll touch on them, okay? After analyzing the pictures and answering to the question, what we have noticed in terms of visibility is that women are more visible than men, and men do not do women's job. In terms of domestic role, we see that women practically, they are portrayed in domestic or family sphere and in traditional jobs. Now, a student who is in a class, who is teaching, who is learning with this material could infer that, okay, women should stay at home, that they should be caring, that they should be submissive, or, okay, their lot in life is to work, to do the difficult job. Even when you go through the text, you will realize that the man is not helping in domestic work. He is neither helping in domestic work nor helping with taking care of the baby. So these are things I think that could be corrected, that could be improved in the textbook that we're using. Next slide, please. Okay, here also you have the set of questions for these pictures, okay? After analyzing them, in terms of visibility, you have no women. In all these activities, there's no women, okay, in the picture, okay? Only men are visible. In terms of occupational role, men are portrayed in this picture as fit for these activities, not women. What inference can be drawn from this on the part of the student is that there is a restriction of job opportunity for them. Their choice in life is limited, okay? No matter how talented they can be. So this can be considered as limiting belief and ambition, okay? This is our modest insight. Next slide. Another picture that really shows this gender divide, okay, is after looking at the question and the picture, the analysis that comes out is, in terms of visibility, men are more visible than women in professional sphere. Can you imagine 2 women out of 10 men, okay, in these pictures, okay? In terms of occupational role, men are exposed to diverse and more rewarding job, okay, than women, okay? What conclusion can be drawn from this is that women, the student can say that women are not as important as men, and this can lead to inhibition or a lack of ambition. Like, even if they had a dream, a secret dream, this can be shattered, okay? This can be blighted, okay? So all these are limiting beliefs that can be corrected in the textbook as far as we understand. Next slide, please. Okay. Here also you have a group of women on one side and another group of men on the other side. This means that, and even if you look at what is written here, they say the women go to the well to get water, the men build dam to keep rainwater. You have a clear separation of the 2 types of activities, okay? Now, what do we learn from this? In terms of visibility, more men than women. Okay, there are more men than women. Domestic role, women are portrayed in traditional activities and they are regarded as the weaker sex. In terms of occupational role, men are fit for hard work. And this can lead to the conclusion that activities for men only, there are activities for men only and activities for women only. And these are limiting beliefs and ambition as far as we understand, okay, for women. Next slide, please. Okay, now this leads us to do a kind of a call to authorities or to education authorities to reconsider, okay, the textbook, because these textbooks, as a matter of fact, they date back to the 80s. Therefore, they're outdated. They need updating. If they cannot be phased out, they need updating, okay, to keep up with the diverse changes and evolution in our society and the world. Okay, we have witnessed lots of changes, lots of improvement in the job attribution in our country. I think that these should appear in the textbook as far as I understand things. So barrier to gender equality in textbook should be pushed back as far as religious and moral belief can tolerate. And I insist on that. We should not overdo things. We should not force things that are not accepted by our society. It is something that I really insist on, okay? But since there are some improvements, some changes in our society, we should make sure that these are visible in the textbook that contribute to shaping the future of our learners, okay? We should also encourage pre-service training and CPD in gender language awareness and acquisition. Encourage teachers to diversify their teaching materials from text, audio, video, pictures, multimedia, and have in mind gender issues while designing lessons for their students. Next slide, please. Some additional recommendation to education authorities, curriculum specialists and textbook editors, without forgetting teachers and practitioners, that we have to know that textbook and other educational materials are tools for social transformation, that they promote equal representation of women and men, but also they should be content free from any gender-based discrimination. We have to ensure that women are as visible as men with leadership roles and non-sexist jobs in all units of teaching material. Okay, I feel that this is happening in our society today when there are some positions that are really kept for women, okay? Some positions just to motivate them to be really having jobs just as men. I mean, this should show in the textbook, okay? They should also portray men as much as possible in domestic setting or sphere, doing household chores and lavishing affection to their wives and children. I feel that this also is possible. It should be encouraged. Okay, I will end my presentation with this quotation and basing on all that I said, that it is the repetition of non-stereotypical situation that deconstruct stereotypes. In this, I say thank you to all of you. Since we have time consent, I was obliged to step up things. Thank you so much, Donna. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
You so much. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the way you pointed out, like, we have to work within certain structures and systems, the textbooks, the social, the moral, religious context, whatever it may be. But you've really demonstrated how we can bring a critical lens to the textbooks that we are working with, and just that awareness alone can help you address some of these issues within your class. So fantastic example. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And I will hand over to our next presenter, please, if you can unmute yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Hello, Donna. Steve.
Hi. Thank you.
Hi.
Can hear you.
Thank you very much for giving us opportunity. I work as an English teacher in a newly established university in northeast of Ethiopia. in this, I just try to encourage teachers to adopt gender-responsive teaching materials as a campaign of awareness program for the last 3 weeks. So in this my presentation, I encouraged teachers to adopt gender-responsive teaching materials at the college, at this public college. Please, next slide. This is my outline of presentation. What are teaching materials? Understanding the teaching materials, a teacher's level of awareness and perception of gender, and some of the reflections teachers gave to me. The challenges they face when making teachers aware of adopting gender-responsive teaching materials at departmental level, at least, and practical ways to address the issues and achievements and the way forward, as they suggested. Next slide, please. Well, understanding teaching materials. Teaching materials are created at the university or on behalf of a university that are intended to be used or accessed by the students for teaching, informing, examining students, explaining concepts to students. So teaching materials can be defined as resources developed or used by teachers in the course of conducting students at a learning institution. Teaching material could be course notes, handouts, presentation materials, educational articles, tutorials, assessments, questions, and many more. Next slide. Well, in the last few weeks, I tried to make aware teachers and to make their teaching materials are gender responsive, and throughout the weeks, teachers were open, and they say that gender issue is relevant as a global issue. So most of the teachers were aware that issue of gender as significant relevant. Some of the teachers started narrating their previous experience of gender from primary to secondary up to tertiary classes. They were consciousness of a gender representation. What the problem is, when they come to the practice, teachers consider themselves as English teacher other than gender teacher. And the issue of gender in many, even this high level, is hidden, is ignored sometimes. And they do not explore gender issues. And the lesson planners and the parishes in all. This is some of the reflections that I have gathered from the teachers. Next slide. Well, some of the challenges I faced during the awareness campaign to this gender responsive material preparation and teaching. One of the challenge is teachers, they say that the gender issue is another department, is on the language department, because it is time consuming and want to go outside the norm, the normal norm, because of lack of awareness to gender sensitive issues in the teaching materials. And another challenge is gender issue remain as micro issue. Is not concerned because materials are prepared in our system. Materials are prepared at national level. So even though teachers have an autonomy to adapt these materials, most of exercises, activities are prepared at national level. So teachers teach based on those materials. Another challenge is curriculum challenges. Some policies are rigid, and school administrators sometimes are policy allergic. This is not possible to change or teach out of the context. So this is another challenge. Another is male-dominated institutional structure. Our university, new university, we have 29 staff, out of which only 2 are women, including secretary. All structures, including the department and committees, are being headed by male teachers. Next slide, please. So what are the ways that I try to address the issue of gender and teaching materials, some of the achievements? Because the teachers are busy here and there. I used to face-to-face interview and focus group discussion to have this gender issue and adapting gender sensitive material for teaching. So interview and focus group discussion. And another activity is I prepared a material which is a reflection of gender issue and the representation of gender in teaching materials in Ethiopia, most textbooks and learning materials. And I just shared them to Telegram, so via email. And finally, I collected a feedback about their perception and awareness of these gender perspectives. Next slide, please. Well, based on this program, this campaign, at least learning together about gender and incorporation of gender issues and language text teaching materials. They were at the end of the teacher were happy, and they tried to changing the language use, images, illustration as a graphics. They were also, teachers understood that the used materials were gender previously biased and stereotyped, and they were misrepresentation of women and girls. And most of the teaching materials they were using were just women and girls are misrepresented in the way that these teaching materials reflect male-dominated issues like dialogue in the text. In the teaching materials, dialogues are filled with men rather than women, and stories, graphs, pictures are male-dominated because the issue of women is just hidden or ignored sometimes. So teachers were so happy to adapting to genders responsive materials, at least through changing the character names, stories, and images, removing sexist language and using neutral nouns instead. These were some of the achievements actually I have gained. And next slide. So finally, based on the feedback after the program, they gave a lot of suggestions like gender is as a global issue. More awareness creation is needed, not at the college level, but throughout university, throughout the education system. Still, because issue of gender is a burning issue across the world, and gender responsive resources should be adapted. That was one of the serious problems in our case is shortage of gender responsive resources. There was no training, there was no that much materials prepared at gender issues. Further training on gender inclusion and material development. Materials are developed at, as I said, a national level, but the teachers are also autonomous to prepare, adapt at least. So in our case, in our department, we have only 2 women out of 29 teachers. So they are not participating. Women are not participating in development of teaching materials like exam questions, assignments, and activities based on the curriculum. That was a challenge, and they suggested that is not a good way of observation. And materials developed at high level should be gender responsive in content at least. And it is establishing gender clubs which empower women and girls and students equally for the participation, the evaluation, and preparation of teaching materials. By the end, I have this quote: teachers are the center of evaluating their teaching materials, adapt them into the way that pursue positive gender representation. This is because it is not possible to bring immediate and overhaul changing of teaching materials, since teaching materials are adapted at national level most of the time. So, but teachers are are able to adapt the teaching materials. Next, this is, yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed how you've showed, having taken the course, your action research here in terms of looking at your context. I think it's great that you've highlighted that, there is a enthusiasm and an interest and an understanding initially in the teachers, but you've demonstrated the realistic challenges we face in terms of time, resources, capacity, the gender representation within your, your teaching team as well. These are all issues I'm sure that many of us connect to, and I just think it's, really exciting and interesting the work you're doing there. So thank you very much for sharing it.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Steve.
So I can see there are some Q&As in the, queues mainly in there. So I'm going to encourage my panelists and presenters, if you are not presenting and you feel comfortable answering some of those questions that might please some of our participants. And I'm really delighted to see there's 166 of us on here. So I'm going to hand over to our next presenter. Please unmute yourself.
All right.
All right. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Abasha Kanafio from Nigeria.
Hi, we can hear you. Thank you.
Reflecting on gender representation in teaching materials, which could also be gender misrepresentation in teaching materials. In the next slide, I have my introduction. Roles in families and gender responsibility, reflecting with a lot of illustrations and a way forward as conclusion. The next slide, please. Gender representation shows the equal numbers of men and women, reflecting in teaching materials, assigning equal roles to both gender. And gender representation in teaching materials convey an implicit message to learners about attitude towards cultural gender roles for women and for men. And this gender insensitive found in most of the teaching materials in Nigeria, especially at the primary level, could be considered harmful, but unintended by the publisher. Most teaching materials portray gender inequality and gender bias, such as mainly connected to the cultural norms of the people. Despite the increasing awareness of gender equality, the educational system still exhibits gender insensitive through the learners' textbooks. In Nigerian context, I consider gender equality issues, especially when it's found in teaching roles of families and gender responsibilities. The next slide, please. The next slide, please. Please, can you go back? Sorry.
Sure, no problem. This one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Educational system exhibits this gender insensitive in roles in families and gender responsibility. Of course, we know family is by far the most insignificant agency of socialization. It plays a major role in the learner's life. It shapes the child's personality and self-esteem. And of course, family is what builds up the society, and society sends a powerful message about what is and what is not gender responsibility in the family. And in turn, the learner comes to accept the household choice. which are usually divided according to gender, and believe that mothers are likely to do more responsibilities in the house than fathers. This mental picture created in the learner's mind is harmful but unintended by the publishers, because it does this to fit into the society norms and the governmental policies. The physical image used in these textbooks are another major setback for our learners. The designs are not intended by the publishers to create harm, but he uses it in order to fix in the cultural norms, what the society wants and what we feel is better, because we set up these cultural norms for ourselves, and most of us were born to see it and we inherit it. With the showcase of illustrations I have, I'm going to explain better what we believed in our society that is best for this gender, that is good for this gender. The next slide, please. Especially in Africa, in Nigeria, we believe that the cooking and the nurturing of babies should be done by the mother. Is the woman's responsibility. Is the woman's responsibility. But in ideal gender equality family, the man can do it. It is not what the society imposed on us. It is what is necessary. The next picture indicates that the cleaning of bowls, the next slide, please. The next picture includes that is the duty of the woman to clean the house and the father to clear the surroundings. That's what the society imposed on us. But the necessary thing in a gender equality society is that both gender can do it without any problem. The last illustration indicates, the next slide. The last pictures indicate that mothers are saddled with the responsibility to bath the children and to back them. Of course, backing children in Africa, especially in Nigeria, we believe is the better way of keeping the baby, maybe to sleep. But at the same time, the father can do it because it is a necessary thing and not what the society wants or what the norms of the society. We now move to the way forward. The next slide, please. The cultural background is a major challenge to teaching materials in Nigeria. The cultural background of the learners, we believe this is what we want. This is what I was born to see. This is what is entailed in the society. But we believe that it was human that made this rule. So at the same time, we could also remove the barrier set on a particular gender. Telling the upcoming learners or the younger generation that a particular responsibility shouldn't be assigned to only a particular gender, but anybody can do it when it fits, when it's necessary in the society and not what the society demands from us. The next one is meeting with the authority concerned and using the picture fits in teaching materials. We have to meet with the school authority and tell them this particular picture shouldn't portray what the society wants. Rather, we should put in a picture that fits in gender equality society, telling us the necessary need and how to meet it, not leaving it for one particular gender to do. And of course, using a correct vocabulary in a gender equality society means a lot. Sometimes we use gender biased language by saying motherly, referring that it's only the mother that can take care of the family. But we can replace it with words like nurturing, caring, indicating that anybody can do it. So in taking the above actions to enhance that, this thing works forward and we meet in what is necessary and not what the society demands or the norms of the society. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. I really enjoyed how you've discussed in detail your experience of the cultural background in Nigeria and connected to, you know, the things that you learn on the course and the context that you're working in, which again is, you know, connected to many of the challenges that lots of us face. And your focus on the family, I think, especially when I think there's research that shows that young children often have clear stereotypes from their cultural context from the age of 6. So your acknowledgement that that is another area of that we're working with and have to consider when we're trying to be more gender responsive in the classroom. Thank you so much for sharing that presentation. So next, I'm going to invite Hatim to unmute himself and begin his presentation.
Yes, hi Donna, hi everyone. Thanks very much. Thank you very much. And let's start. It's okay.
Yes, I just think someone else might need to mute. So if all presenters other than Hatim ensure that they're muted. Thank you.
Okay. So in this session here, we are going to speak about gender education in language teaching practice and teaching materials. And let's start. Next, please. In this session, this session outcomes would be, by the end of this session, you will be better able to distinguish the concepts of gender in education. And my colleagues did their best, as we see here. I realize the importance of evaluating teaching practice and teaching materials according to gender equality and equity. Next, please. Here we have an introduction. So as we know, teaching complex is a complex task, as the behavior modification of students is not simple process in classroom. There are learners with different backgrounds in terms of physical, of course, mental, emotional, social, learning style also, and gender. So as teachers, we have to take care of these kinds of differences here. To achieve this task, teachers need actual information and specific skills in teaching, which is very important. In this session, we are trying to raise awareness about the importance of evaluating teaching practice and teaching materials according to gender equality and equity. Next, please. Here we have an activity. What we are going to do here, now, not yet, Steve, it's okay. Look at the two pictures, it's okay, no problem. Look at the two pictures. As a teacher, imagine that you have to teach mixed class as it means girls and boys. Which book would you select? The pictures, please, Steve. Yes. And why? So please have a look here. We have two groups, as you see, and you can share your answers in the chat box or a message. So here we have two groups of books as teachers. Which book will you select to teach your mixed class, boys and girls? Do we have answers? Donna, Steve? The chat box.
I can see a few questions in the chat box. Oh, somebody
No
has said,
responses?
I will choose one from each section.
But
Bit of a balance.
you have to take one.
You're forcing them to take one. So if you could only...
Yes.
See,
So
teachers
what...
are creative. They will always find another way.
Yes, yes. Creativity and imagination is very important for teachers. So, and we have to justify and why. Of course, it's okay. Do you have, yes, of course, none of the two groups. As they may only suitable only for boys or girls students, so the right choice is to find your own book. So it's very important for teachers is to know what kinds of books, what source of books that you are going to use for post. Yes, next slide, please. Here, gender representation in teaching practice as teachers. How can make sure that gender equality and equity are represented in our teaching practice and materials? Let's share some ideas. Let's think and share. Gender equality and equity are represented in our teaching practice. not only in our teaching materials, even practice as teachers. Do you have any ideas?
So we have a few people still putting some information about the books.
Very good.
Let's see. So groupings, somebody has
Yes,
said,
very interesting. It's very nice.
teachers should not be biased when making groupings.
Yes. Great. And
yeah, talking about administrators, so that even our school administrators need to understand gender issues in education.
It's very interesting. So as teachers, we have to make sure that our selection in teaching strategies, even methods and topic activities, and even our English language classroom, when giving instruction, is gender-centered approach. So we have to take care about the gender. We have to take care when we use language in classroom, when giving an instruction to setting, for example, a task or an activity. It's very important, even when we make our posters and everything. So it's very, 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 very important part of our teaching. And we have to avoid gender stereotyping and unconscious bias, which have been mentioned by some of our participants here. Very interesting. Thank you very much. Let's move to the next slide, please. Yes, here we have gender representation in teaching materials. Example of a book evaluation here. And I'd like to thank the program of English Connects here, because after I have attended the program of English Connects Gender in Language Education, I started to evaluate many books according to what I have learned. For example, let's take Spine 6, which is one of our previous syllabus of English here in Sudan. The book, obviously, here our book, I'm speaking about Spine 6, which I like very much. The book here obviously represents gender equality and equity in terms of units. And I try to make, for example, comparison between the units and even the topics that speaks about gender, their representation of even images, and targeted the main concepts of gender education in many articles. This is what I like about this book. It's directly speak about the importance of girls' education, and we have a question here, a lecture, all right, and how to support girls in education and how to let them overtake these opportunities, which is very important, and encourage them to participate in school in different ways. And even we have a unit 5 speaks about women participation, lifeline, development, and even they spoke about the Women Conference in Beijing in China, 1995. There is also an example of some writers, women writers as Agatha Christie. So what I like about this book is the targeted, the main ideas about to change the traditional image of women, girls in our family, society, and communities, which is very important part of this book. The next slide, please. Here, yes, we come to conclude. At the end of the session, we can find that gender in education is essential factor in teaching process. As teachers, we have to evaluate our teaching practice and teaching materials according to gender equality and equity criteria. Thanks for sharing your ideas, information, and effective participation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Hatim. Yeah, I can see lots of interaction in the Q&A. So if you fancy typing some responses whilst we have the next presentation, that would be amazing. Thank you, participants, for your engagement. And obviously, due to time pressures, we can't stop each time and respond to your questions, but the speakers will try and respond to them as and when they're not speaking. So I think Hatim just gave a really clear example there of how sometimes even the way our materials are presented can be gendered. So we group those books into, you know, strong boys and for girls, or strong girls, whatever. We can inadvertently then turn students away from it, or maybe they would like to choose a book from a different section, but all the expectations and social norms around them would make it more challenging if they were presented like that. And the fact that, yeah, we all need to work on our awareness, and your key word in that last bit there is evaluate. We're always thinking critically about what we're using, how we're using it, what we're speaking, the way we're saying it. And that is key. This is a long-term process working towards gender responsiveness, and all those things you mentioned are a big part of that. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to presenter number 5. You may unmute yourself and begin your presentation when you're ready, Babakar.
Hello.
Hello, yes, we can hear you. The connection
Can you hear me perfectly?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly. That's great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. As for me, my presentation is about raising awareness about stereotypes in junior high school in a Senegalese context. My name is Babakar Gueye Diouf. I'm a teacher of English in BAM Junior High School. Next slide. Okay, I will start with an outline. I will start with a riddle. And after the definition of gender stereotypes, and give some example of gender stereotypes in Senegalese schools. And after talk about strategies to overcome gender stereotypes and give some references. Next slide, please. This is a riddle. Please, Guy, after you answer on the chat box. A father and a son are in a car accident, and tragically, the father is killed instantly. His son is rushed to the hospital, but the surgeon says, I can't operate on her. She's my daughter. Explain. Who is a surgeon? Please, guys, share in the chat box. Who is a surgeon?
Let's see. If you can
Donna,
type,
okay.
Yeah, I'm having a look. If you can type your answer as a question, that sounds like a strange thing to do, but I can see many of you are engaging using the questions with. So who is the surgeon in this story? Let's see, I'll just give you a couple more seconds to see if you can put your answer in. Maybe you stumped it. Oh, somebody's written the mother. That's from Christy.
Yeah.
Thank you, Christy.
One more.
Any other ideas? Oh, yeah, the surgeon is a mother, mother. So the general consensus in the chat is the mother.
Okay, thank you very much. Next slide. Now the reflexive question is, could you easily find the answer of the riddle? Why or why not? Share in the chat.
Yeah, we have a mixture of people very confident with their answers, and then some that did have some confusion.
Yeah, I can understand. What have you there, Donna?
There are no more responses. So yeah, if you would like to put your response in the question there. So using of conflicting gender terms, somebody said, I presume that might be why they found it difficult to answer. Yeah.
Okay, I appreciate that. Just to move to the next slide to say, what is gender stereotypes? We can see that gender stereotypes are preconception about attributes or characteristics that are or ought to be possessed by women and men, or the roles that are or should be performed by men and women. Gender stereotypes can be both positive and negative. For example, women are nurturing or women are weak. That's what we call gender stereotypes. Next slide, please. Okay, we have some myths as far as gender stereotypes are concerned. And we see that most of the time here, in Senegal, We can hear it perhaps after my colleagues or the viewers will give their point of view about that. We see that sometimes we say boys are slower than girls to read, or girls are naturally quieter than boys. Science and math are boys' subjects. Boys are better at sport than girls. Girls should clean the classrooms. That I want just to say here in Senegal, sometimes whenever it comes to cleaning, we call girls, we say girls clean the classroom, clean the schoolyard, etc. It happens to me, and I am sure it can happen to most of you also. Next slide, please. Now, I want you to know what are the stereotypes which exist in your context. Please share in the chat.
So somebody shared about, it's a question actually for earlier on, but I think it also connects to this about what you've just said, the norms and roles in the classroom or in the context, and the labor division in society. So who does what out in and outside the classroom as well. Also that boys should be the bell ringers. That's something.
Okay. Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much for this great answer. And this, it seems that it is a little bit general. Okay. And I have done a neat analysis with my students, and I asked them as an activity to tell me to draw what I can call a vocabulary wheel, where they will insert inside the wheel all the jobs that men can do and all the jobs that women can do. And I have noticed that with the next slide, I've noticed that most of them said that male students, sorry for that, really, most of the time they are masons, drivers, presidents, scientists, mechanics, electricians, rappers, artists, sport players, dockers, butchers, farmers, etc. And also women, most of them, most of my female students say that female or women are hospital porters, nurses, language teachers, cooks, waitresses, servants, secretary, dancers, window cleaners, caretakers, elementary cleaning occupations, etc. And this to say that there are what we call there are stereotypical jobs that it is viewed here in Senegal, in my area. Whenever you want to say, whenever a female student said, I want to be a soldier, all the class, all the boys start laughing at her. And this is what we call stereotypes. It is not because we are male that we are not, we can do everything. Okay, next slide. Now, how to fight against gender stereotypes in school? I will say to my fellow teachers to stop saying to female students, clean. The verb to clean should be general. Writings or the classroom and not students, they should share the task. All the students should share the task. As far as cleaning, cleaning is human. Then we must, all the students should clean. Teachers should avoid sentences like, I need 4 strong students to move, 4 strong boys to move the table. 4 strong boys to move the table. It is not because we are boys that we are always strong. You can admit that. Then teachers should use generalized terms. They should not ask only easy question to female and say that to female and say that boys probably or will answer the most difficult question. Do not select for female like language, or you say Spanish, English, French. Sometimes we see on series, we say that female can do L series because they are, as we see in the need analysis, language teachers, etc. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you very much, dear viewers. This was my presentation, and I will recommend you the book of Loretta J. Ross, which is talking about call in, call out. As I said that, as I have forgotten to mention it. Sometimes we in classrooms, instead of understanding female or boys, we just call out. To call out is just to invite someone to a fight. A female student or male student do something, instead of calling him or her, you tell just how dare you do this, etc. And you shout at him. This is to call out. We prefer to call in, which is to invite him to a debate, to a discussion, etc. Or to call on, be silent and tell him, can you tell me more? And the book of Loretta J. Ross and others are very good. The video of Loretta J. Ross are very good things you can view. Thank you very much, Donna. That was my presentation. It was Babacar Gejo from Bam Junior High School in Senegal, West Africa.
Thank you so much. And I think what you just said at the end there about the Loretta Ross video about calling people in when we're talking about challenging issues like this, your example that you shared of the activity you did with the wheel is a brilliant example of that, because you could sit down and lecture your students about these are gender stereotypes and these are harmful, but that whole activity that you described in itself is a calling in experience. You're meeting them where they're at. You're not presuming they all hold gender stereotypes, because we know that we're all working at different levels. We all have some, and we're all working on others. And I think that's a great example. I also love the fact that when you were trying to give the example about the 4 strong boys, you accidentally said 4 strong students. So you already nearly corrected yourself, which shows me how much you're working on this language anyway, because you nearly wasn't able to say the boys part. So it's a great example. Thank you for sharing your work there. And now I believe we have our final presentation. And so I will ask Susanna to unmute herself. And yes, also once again, draw my wonderful team of panelists and presenters their attention to the Q&A, and feel free to be answering some of the questions that are in there, because I can see there's a lot of activity. Thank you.
Good. Hello. I hope everybody can hear me. Donna?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you to you and to Steve for organizing this, and for everybody for your just attending, and also the fellow panelists for taking part in this conversation. We've learned so much together already. So I'm going to start off, Donna, if you could just give us that first slide to show something of my experience in South Africa, and especially also looking wider, and starting off with a topic that I thought gender matters for learning, learning matters for gender, that one can take further as time goes by. But it's very clear that gender awareness is increasingly presented as a topic of global importance. It is becoming part of the official thinking of large organizations. For instance, in 2007, the United Nations provided guidelines and strategies for gender-inclusive language in English for their staff. One example is to avoid gender bias expressions that reinforce gender stereotypes like "that's women's work" or "men just don't understand." And The Guardian of 7 February 2023 reports that the Church of England is re-evaluating the use of gendered language and will soon be launching a commission to discuss possibilities of the introduction of gender-neutral terms in reference, for instance, to God. This all fits in well with the new ways of looking that are promoted by the United Nations Goals for Sustainable Development, especially Goal 5, to achieve gender equality and also to empower all women and girls. We are all called to critique our language and the attitudes ingrained in our cultural DNA. Attitudes designed to stunt fundamental human rights and the development of a peaceful, prosperous, and sustainable world, to quote from the United Nations goals. Right, so the second slide. The past months have seen an active debate develop about gender issues in South African school environments and in education in general. The Foundation of Education and Social Justice Africa is lobbying for the introduction, amongst others, of inclusive and gender neutral terms in South African schools. The foundation holds that terms linking leadership roles within a student body with traditional gender roles could be discriminatory and harmful to non-binary or transgender learners. The foundation Deputy Chairperson, Hendrik Makaneta, puts it as follows: we must protect their rights as well in order to build an inclusive education system. Because if you continue to use head boy and head girl, it means such learners may not be able to participate fully in the leadership structures of learners within the terrain of education. Much has also been written in the media about gender inequalities and disparities highlighted, for example, in the South African 2022 grade 12 results that were released at the end of January this year. In an article in the Daily Maverick, January 2023, titled, "Where Have All the Young Men Gone?" Lindy Roberts investigates the reasons why in 2022, 167,860 18-year-old women were enrolled in a full-time grade 12, as opposed to 106,814. So it's 167,000 as opposed to 106,000 men. And she asks the question, what is our education system expecting? And what are schools doing that makes men more vulnerable to dropping out? Why are they failing more? What is going on in homes and communities which pulls men away from schools? And how do those factors play out in society and employment at large? And then there is the further question asked: why are so few girls achieving in STEM subjects, in science, technology, engineering and maths, and especially computer science? The following story, and now we could, okay, wait, we can start moving over to the next slide, is told against the backdrop of these debates and with UNICEF's report in mind, showing that millions of young people, especially girls, need more teaching materials and learning experiences to develop lateral thinking and problem-solving skills to participate more effectively in society and in the changing future of work. I believe that it is by no means an insignificant story about how the 4 C's model, communication, critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, can help address the 21st century challenges that lie ahead. Right, so here are these wonderful young people telling us a story. In January this year, a group of grade 4 to 7 learners of Holy Cross Primary School took part in their very first ever STEM and robotics camp held in the peri-rural area outside Makanda in the Eastern Cape. The learners are all from a low socio-economic background. When I read about the camp in our local newspaper, it raised questions for me. How did this camp come about? What learning experiences were created? And how could these experiences be linked to the staff's attitudes and the learners, especially the girls' self-image, as well as their use of language for learning and their broadening thinking skills and views for future career options? Nikki Hayes, the Holy Cross principal, explains that the camp was the brainchild of Anna, an American student who had visited the school a few years earlier as part of her church's community engagement project. A close relationship developed with the school children who live mainly on surrounding farms. And over time, she inspired fellow students and friends to imagine and create an exciting plan of teaching and learning for these young learners. In the end, she was joined by a group of 12 students from universities in the New York State, along with a teacher and 2 of her final year students from Spencer Court High School in the United States. And the students, would you believe, paid their own travel cost to come and visit. And so the magic began of a unique global South, global North exchange amongst the rolling hills and grasslands of the Eastern Cape landscape, with a vision for learning new and old things in a transformative space. I recently spent a few hours at the school with a grade 6 class to hear why they think STEM subjects are important and what the camp meant to them. Those subjects are important, one learner said, if you, like me, want to become a doctor. And then their dreams about future careers came flowing. The boy said, astronaut, pilot, traffic officer. The girls seemed to stick to more familiar careers like doctor, lawyer, teacher. About gender equality, some felt unsure. The boys were better at building things. I liked it when the boys helped us make the plastic bottle car with a balloon. And they won the race because our car just would not go straight. Yes, said a boy, girls are better at cleaning and cooking. But some boys were adamant. Girls and boys are equal. And the girls agreed. We want to do robotics and science at university one day. A boy raises a thought. Perhaps they'll feel a bit shy. So many things to learn from their stories. They are, just like us, still making sense of gender perceptions in a changing world. The male and female visitors from the United States shared fun projects with the children and became powerful role models. And the Holy Cross teacher, Bernie Hubbard, is taking on the challenge with the learners to continue doing robotics and design. She says, we now have some great equipment. We know that we like to learn by making things. We are ready to move to the next level. And this, Nikki Hayes believes, is how hands-on experiences can help a new generation work towards shifting attitudes and challenge inequalities and stereotyping in schools, imagining a world where young people of all genders can reach their full potential. Thank you. That's me.
Thank you so much, Susanna. It was
Thank
beautiful.
you.
I loved it.
Thank you, Anna.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the way you connected initially to the, the human rights and sustainable development goals aspect, something I think we sometimes overlook. And, we think, oh, if I accidentally say, and we all accidentally do things, oh, strong boys or, pretty girls or whatever, I don't mean to, and it's not harmful. But in the wider context of what we're working on, these gender stereotypes, biases, language is harmful, and you making that clear connection to human rights and the SDGs there is really important. And what a fantastic example. And something else that you said about we are all making sense of our, our gender perceptions, and you demonstrated that curiosity that we all have as teachers. I think that's a key part of being a teacher. But that, yeah, we're all still working towards these long-term goals and understanding ourselves where we fit in. And also they keep changing, right? So, 10 years ago, our understanding of gender stereotypes and bias are different now. So we all, like you say, have to keep making sense of that. Fantastic. Okay, we look at this. My presenters are phenomenal. We have 10 minutes now to answer. I'm going to say probably 1 or 2 questions from the chat. So I'm going to have a little, I'm calling it a chat, but it's actually questions and answer box. So we've got lots of questions in here. I don't know if there's any of the presenters actually, before I select, is there any particular question one of our presenters would like to unmute themselves and answer? No response. They're all exhausted now after that. Okay, let me see. I'm really happy to see at one point we had 170 attendees, and there's been lots of engagement in the chat. So I'm really glad that you are so engaged and interested in this topic. So this is a great question. So panelists, I'm going to put this to you. In writing my own stories, I try and avoid using gendered materials. But how do I navigate the challenge with school admin and management who might not be on the same page as me? So would any one of my panelists like to unmute themselves and respond? Because it is a question that many, challenge that many of us face. The systems that we work within, how do we help them to also have that same curiosity and desire as we do?
Hi, Donna.
Hi.
Yes, it's me, Hatim, here about this question. I think here the writer asked about how he can change, for example, the character of a story or something related to the syllabus or the book or an article.
Yeah, and also the wider, so maybe the attitudes and understandings of people that work within the school as well.
So as we usually know as teachers, asking questions is the art of teaching. So asking concept checking questions, maybe encourage the students, for example, to give an examples or to make sentences very important. For example, if I have a topic that speaks about, for example, a hero, a man, for example, and I'm going to ask, do you know any other characters, female characters, for example? At the same time, do you think only men are very strong, for example, or the boys are very strong? Do you know another character, so on, so. So what you can change it in a book or in an article, try to change it in the classroom. Try to use your creativity and imagination, critical thinking, problem solving, and inclusion, teaching, and so on. I think it would be very easy for the teachers to make this change inside the class, and that would enrich the lesson at the same time and make the lesson more learner-centered approach. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hatem. Did another one of our speakers want to respond to the question?
Hi, Donna. Can I take the floor?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, regarding your question, I think that we have to advocate. We have to advocate for the situation to change. It's true that sometimes we are navigating in a context where people are not responsive to these changes, but I think if we talk to them in the long run, they might adhere to the cause. Like, for example, involving the student in role play, okay, telling the administration that, okay, this could help the student, okay, get out of their laziness or their shyness. When you keep on talking about these things, maybe in the long run, people will adopt them. Okay, this is what I think. Also, doing some action research within the classroom, okay, to see what prevents, for example, girls to get fully involved in activities, okay, group works or things, to try and spot the problem and solve them, to show them that this is the advantage when we fight this gender role or something like that. I think that it's a continuous awareness raising on the part of the teacher towards the student and towards the staff. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, this work is continuous. Did anybody else want to respond to this question?
Hello, Donna.
Hi.
Good. I think the problem is, and the solution starts from a classroom and goes to the school structure. And texts are mainly reflected gender bias and stereotypes because women are not fully engaged, participate in the preparation of teaching materials. And even the school administration systems are led by male heads. So I think inclusive teaching material, which means fully engaging girls and women, which leads to learner-centered approach. And adapting the materials, which means revising this materials year by year and see the way that they are gender responsive. And teachers at the school should adapt their teaching materials. And awareness and attitude matters. And even new methods of gender responsive teaching approach should be introduced. This is achieved if teachers are aware. Awareness is very important. And from the primary to tertiary and high level in all administrations. So gender adaptive materials matters. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Did anybody else want to respond to this question?
Yes, apart from the school authority, we should also look at the governmental policy. Sometimes in adopting these materials, if the government doesn't support it, we will just do very little. So I think the governmental policy plays a major role in we adopting it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello.
Hi, Babaka. Go for it.
Okay. I've seen the question of, I think it is Fidel, who is asking about what is the impact of gender stereotypes in for girls' assimilation in the classroom. I think it is that. And what I have noticed that when there is a stereotype, sometimes you may notice that those female students this is a kind of discrimination. They no longer participate in classes. I'm talking about my own experience. They no longer participate in classes. They are no longer involved in classroom activities. And if you say that these kind of questions are for male students only, you have to generalize. That's what I was talking about. This question is difficult. Perhaps this boy will feel comfortable with it. He will find the answer, things like that. We have just to put them in the same footing in terms of question, maybe series also, as series like scientists or languages, you'd let them feel free and based on their results or grades, you can orientate them, but don't tell female students you are a little bit weak, just go to L series, meaning the literature, things like that, or languages, and let them feel free. That's what I wanted to add. Thank you, Donna.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's amazing. Yeah.
Donna,
Go for it, Sam.
Can I just add one thing that I found with students that I work with at Rhodes University, and also with learners, that they are a new generation, and they are often they are ready to take on new perspectives, maybe more so than older generations. And I think that our young learners, if they are guided and discussions are open with teachers, that they can help build a new world. You know, they go home and question their parents and their families' perceptions. And if all goes well, that it can create new conversations that can lead to something positive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's brilliant. Okay, I would love to continue this conversations and these are questions with you all, always, forever. We could spend another 2 hours on here, but I am aware of the time. Just very quickly, I want to share my screen because we have so much interest in this webinar. I just wanted to highlight the British Council have another online course coming up, exploring gender equality in education. You can see the website up here. You can also, in one of your search engines, put British Council Gender Equality in Education online course, and you click here to register. It's different from the course that these presenters did, but there'll be, I'm sure there'll be, you know, plenty that will interest you and that you will gain from, and always keep an eye on these British Council online courses and opportunities because, I mean, from my experience, it's been very enjoyable and very worthwhile. So I would like to say an enormous thank you to the speakers. That we have been collaborating on these presentations and they have been doing the work alongside all the other things in life that they need to do. So thank you also to the attendees for your engagement, your questions. Again, apologies if we didn't manage to answer or acknowledge any of them. It is a function that we are working within with time. So I will hand over to Steve. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, also, thanks, Donna. Thanks,
Thank you, Steve.
our dear panelists, Danacho, Usman, Hati, Abasiaka.
Thank you very much, Steve.
San. It was actually a pleasure to have you, with us today.
Thank you.
So this actually concludes the webinar. Thanks for, again, all our attendees. We actually hope that you've learned and enjoyed these presentations. We appreciate your feedback and, would like to learn a bit more about you and, eventually how we can improve, the way we deliver our actual webinars. So these can benefit other teachers like you. So we have a feedback form that will be sent to you in the next day as a follow-up. So you can eventually obtain a certificate of participation. And the link to obtain the certificate is actually provided at the end of the survey. So, we'll be glad to hear from you. And we also invite you to join our community practice group on Telegram, where we'll eventually discuss a bit more about some of these issues and then how we can actually tackle them, based on, the work that has been done, with our 6 participants. And, we actually had a large group of 40 participants, for this project. So they all have something to say, and we would actually eventually, complete, meet all in Telegram, so we can continue the conversation over there. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Good to have you. Have a nice weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
See you. Bye. Bye.